Hey, it's our marketing assistance video for August of 2023. And the topic for this month is going to be interest rates. The point of these videos is just to give you a little more assistance on either topics in the grain market or in the industry. And interest rates have been something that continues to be a growing concern in the industry and as we talk also on the farm. So when I put this information together, I got information from like different universities, some ag lending banks that do ag lending and their actual websites, as well as the USDA. So let's talk about the Federal Reserve, or what everybody calls the Fed. They have continued to rise interest rates to combat inflation. Now, I'll be honest, inflation could be a whole nother video that we could do and talk about how it affects the farming community. But in very simple terms, inflation is when you just have too much demand for products. So instead of having 3 people demanding a certain product, you've got 30 people demanding that same product, and it just drives up prices. That's very simple terms. So we have seen the Fed increase interest rates to combat that. Purdue University does what they call the Ag Barometer every so often. You've probably seen it, but they send out surveys of what are you concerned about? What are you seeing on your farm that is concerning? And they kind of have them rank them. And probably no surprise to you, the number one has been rising input costs to actually raise the crop. And it's been that way for, I think, almost a couple of years in that number one position. But what changed on this last survey, which was from July, that was released this month in August, was that the number 2 position went to rising interest rate cost, as opposed to usually it's going to be lower crop prices or lower livestock prices. So that shows to me, not only is this a concern in the industry and in agribusiness, but then also on the farms as well. So, and rising interest rates do impact, the farm, personally affects the farm. So number one, operating loans, right? So if operating loans interest rates are higher, you're going to have a higher interest rate expense. And until the end of 22, for the most part, what we saw was the percentage of interest rates that were a percentage of the income was working their way lower pretty much for the last 20 years. So what you were paying in interest as a percentage of your income was relatively small and working their way lower until the end of 22. And that's when things started to change. Higher interest rates do a multitude of things on the farm, but a big thing, it just lowers liquidity, right? So it makes the small pile of cash that you have even smaller. And from past experience, what we've all experienced is that expenses take longer to go down than it seems like it takes expenses to go up, right? It seems like expenses go up relatively quickly, but as far as the contraction of those expenses, it seems like it takes longer to adjust. And I think the negative part is that then we could see that margin number on each particular farm get smaller, if not get negative. And I think that's what the risk is, really, is that those margins, because of these small increases in interest rate, not small increases in expenses, take margins negative. The Fed actually, by district, puts out an ag newsletter. And so it seems like they do this every so many months, and they actually talk about the ag lending industry. So the one from July 1st it talks about the nominal interest rates. And they actually published that new operating loans was at 8.24%. Feeder cattle loans were at 8.19%. Farm real estate loans was at 7.33%. That's the highest since the third quarter of 2007. So we have to go all the way back to the end of 2007 to experience these type of interest rates. And those interest rates did carry into 2008. I found an alarming quote in the report, and I'm going to read it to you. So it says, April through June of 2023, the demand for non-real estate farm loans was lower than a year ago. Okay. As was the level of funds available for lending by ag banks. I interpret that as glad you guys didn't need as much money on those loans because we didn't have as much money to lend. If that trend continues, I think that's something that could create some pain points in the ag community. So what are some things to be aware of? So I think it's likely that interest rates are going to continue through this calendar year. It sounds like the Fed has already came out and said for sure we're going to see one more interest rate. There is speculation there could be 2 more hikes between now and the end of the year. You know, being proactive and following how much those expenses are and those increases on your farm is. And I actually have a couple of quotes. So I asked some friends that are in the ag banking industry to participate, and they said they would. So I'm going to pull up their quotes. This is Barry. He works with Agro Financial Services. I worked with Barry when I was also with CGB. So his quote was, for farmers, short-term rates have gone from 3% in the COVID era to some about 7% today. Long-term rates have gone as low as 2.95 to now anywhere from 6.5 to 8.5 for fixed terms. This equates to over 2.5 times the amount of interest that have been paid on those same loans. And Barry and Agro Financial Services focuses on land and building loans. The next one is Steve with Hoosier Hills. And his comment was, over the past 18 months, the daily accrued interest for every $1,000 borrowed at prime has gone from 9 cents per day to 23 cents per day. That's going to significantly impact farmers' bottom line. So thank you for those 2 guys and their organization for giving us some quotes. Steve and his group do focus more on operating loans. So thank you so much. So there are varying opinions. So both of them said, hey, interest rates compared to where we were have increased. Be prepared for an increase in interest rate expenses. And there's various opinions that out there when you start researching this, it seems like some think that we're going to get to the high of the interest rates at the end of this year and then work our way lower. Others feel like this is going to be kind of a new norm for the next couple of years. A suggestion from the University of Wisconsin at Madison is what to do. So, okay, you're facing higher interest rates than we've experienced since 2007. What can we do about it? So their suggestions were do a financial analysis of your farm and review what your repayment capacity actually is. Consult your lender about the structure of your loans. You know, what's a fixed rate, what's a variable rate, and so on. Develop a cash flow projection. And I know we haven't talked about cash flows in over a decade, and it's been obvious. So go out and Google. There's some really good tools out there now. So yeah, just go out and Google farm cash flow projections and look at that. And of course, their last suggestion is lock in profits as much as you can and lower your working expenses as much as you can. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you would like to continue the conversation, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Thanks for watching. Bye.